tell me a little bit about your family history?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Ireland and worked at a hotel that was close to my house that had large parks and for where visitors and tourists came to fish and hunt and all that. And they had grounds like similar to the Parks Department here. That I got a lot of experience from that. I used to work after school and on vacations and shortly after that. Then I ended up going to in the city working for a larger hotel. But I stayed there for a year, and from there I went to London because work was not very good in the parts I was raised in. So I ended up in London, and I got a job with a big company. They were putting a pipeline from London to Kingston-on-Thames, and was involved that a large pipe where you could walk inside it. It had to be welded and special things done. So I worked on that for about 6 years, and until the time I wanted to emigrate to the United States anyway, so I wrote to my uncle, and he said, come on. He sent me the papers. I came to the United States on November 3rd, 1953. And I started working with Gillette Safety Razor in Boston and ended up working for a meat company, wholesale meat company, Woodbridge Meat in Faneuil Hall in Boston. But my cousin, that was a priest here that moved to California because his health wasn't too good, and there was a doctor they both went to Boston College, and they moved to California. His name was Dr. Nolan. In fact, gave away my wife when we got married and so forth. And we ended up, my wife went to Ireland for the last month, so before we got married, I came to California and she joined me here. And we got married in Whittier, California. And she worked at St. Joseph's Hospital. I worked at Revere Copper and Brass at Santa Ana. And we bought a house at 922 where I presently live in Santa Ana. I was working, but work stuff, how I got the job with Revere Copper, another Bostonian that went to Boston College, was in charge, the CEO at Revere Copper. So he recognized the name and he recognized the two people I had referenced. And he called me and interviewed me, and he wanted me to go to work. I put an application. That's how I got to work for Revere Copper. In the meantime, I didn't care too much for factory work. But I wanted a kind of outdoor type. So I didn't think much about it because there wasn't many jobs like that available. So my neighbor came. I lived at Occidental Street since 1957 to 64. Well, I still lived there, but there was a neighbor who used to come and meet. There was a man come to meet my neighbor, and he used to see the kind of work I did. That man was working at Irvine Park at the time. So he came over and asked me would I be interested to go and try to there's a job opening at Irvine Park. So I said yes, okay. So I went down to personnel and they gave me an application and they sent me up to Irvine Park here. And I was interviewed by the superintendent, Bill Kingsley. And he said, did I know how to make rockwork or build rockwork, different things. I knew, of course, everything that I did pretty well. And he said, if we hired you, he said, how soon you could come to work? Well, I said I have to give my old neighbor, my old place, 2 weeks' notice, and then I wasn't sure whether I wanted the job or not because the pay was only $3.98 a month gross. You get paid twice a week. I said, "Woo!" I had to take about $100 a month dip in pay. So I wasn't sure about it, so at least I had 2 weeks to think about it. So I got home and my wife said, "There's a phone number, call for you." I just walked in the door. He said, "I want you to try to gives you 2 weeks notice. If you want to come with us, you're hired. You're welcome." Because we were very impressed with your interview. So I still wasn't sure. I said, "Well, okay, I'll give you a call if I change my mind." So I said, anyway, I started working at Irvine Park. Anyway, I started September 1st, 1964. It happened to be Labor Day. What a time. This park was full to the brim with people, especially from LA. We had a lot of, Labor Day wasn't the worst, but I was assigned to special jobs. I had to go to the sheriff's department and get deputized because at the time we had to be deputized. Because we worked inmates, and you had to have a clean record, no criminal record whatsoever. You had to be fingerprinted and all that before you even could get the job. So I had to show my citizenship paper also at personnel. I had to make sure that everything was clear before I was hired. But then I was assigned here to special jobs. I had to get a Class 3 license because I was going to the T.O. Lacey jail or whatever, pick up inmates, myself and another man, and to get 25 to 30 inmates. We had a special truck with a canvas on it to take people to Irvine Park, our inmates, to work, pick up trash. We used to pick our own trash and our garbage truck. At that time, there was a tree man, equipment operator, carpenter, and there was 25 people total, including the clerk that worked between Irvine and O'Neill. That's the only 2 parks we had. And it stayed like that for quite a while until about 67 that I took an exam for a test rather. And I was then hired or promoted for Miles Square Regional Park. That was just going to be built, or they was started on it. And Federley Park was going to be built shortly after that. There was I was promoted to foreman by that time, and the other 2 foremen that was here, one got sick and he didn't work no more. He was at O'Neill Park, and the other foreman, he was going to be assigned to stay here or go to Featherly Park. Both Miles Square and Featherly was almost built at the same time. So anyway, I went to Miles Square, and I worked at O'Neill before that, and I was senior maintenance. I was in charge when the foreman wasn't there on weekends and his days off or on vacation. I was in charge, but I was called a senior maintenance man. Then when I became a foreman, of course, then I came down here and ran this park until I moved to Miles Square. They sent me to Miles Square 6 months before it opened to follow the contractor, which was Putman Inc. at the time. The trees were only 1 gallon size and looked like a cemetery, so bare and everything else. There was 1 lake. That was phase 1. And I spent 6 months to make sure that I watched what was going on, that they did things right. And there was also an inspector from Building Services. See, back then there was different departments. Building Services was, you had to go to meetings to any buildings that was going on or any improvements at all, that you had to sit on the whatever, see what was going on, make sure there was no ditch opened or any dangers going on during the working days when people was visiting the park. But anyway, when I went to Mile Square, we opened Mile Square Park actually in 1970. We didn't have a booth for the park attendant. We just had started charging in Irvine Park 50 cents a vehicle. So that all had to be arranged before that. And I had no booth in Mile Square, so I had to get the carpenter from here. There was some lumber left over from Featherly Park, and we built a booth. The booth is still there, right in front. There was a gate with the thing, but no booth for a park attendant to stand in. And the park office was kind of a little smaller than what it's now. And we had a lot of things going on. We were arranged for, when it opened in 1970, we had a lake and we had to decide to stock it with fish. And it was a big day when the fish stocking was called. There was a supervisor called Batten, Robert Batten. Anyway, there's another story about that. He was there, and there was about, I don't know how many thousand people around that, 10 deep, throwing their lines out, and he just get caught with the lines, the hooks and everything else. Anyway, there was the news, it was like Henry Alfaro worked for Channel 7. He was a reporter, because they were, all reporters were there. There should be a picture of that someplace, but I don't know where it is. But that was at Mile Square. But then the hard work came. We had to mow our own grass. We had not contracted the mowing the grass out yet. So we had to budget for our, not budget, we weren't much budget yet, but we had to get large 7-gang lawnmowers to mow big areas like Mile Square. So we did all that in-house. It was later on when they decided to contract that out. And we just got started with groundskeepers. There was no groundskeepers before that. It was just strictly maintenance workers. So anyway, I spent probably close to a year there, and the superintendent Kingsley retired. There was that time all department joined. They were going into the EMA, and that's when new superintendent came in, and his name was Joe Cardello. I was already a foreman. He was the superintendent, and his office was down at Newport Beach. So he called me. I was at Mile Square. He called me down to Newport Beach. He said, "Mike, I want you to come down here and organize the whole beach." Dana Point was being built. Aliso Beach, Sunset Aquatic Park, Sunset Beach, 1,000 steps and many right-of-ways. I want you to organize how many people you think you'll need to work these areas. And that's, I said, you can go back to Mile Square when you have that done. So anyway, there was a maintenance guy at the Harbor Patrol. The Harbor Patrol wasn't the Sheriff's Department yet, that knew the areas. So he went with me and we showed us the areas. And I decided I'd split up the beaches, one called South Beaches and the other part be North Beaches. I had 2 rangers, one for South and one for North. Ranger, at that time they were ranger, they were just rangers. There was supervising ranger and ranger. And decided how many people it took to maintain Dana Point Harbor, because there was part of it wasn't full yet with boats. They leased out. We made campgrounds there for 6 months or so. And there was one of the maintenance workers that had the Harbor Patrol lived in Dana Point. He had a house supplied to by the county. That was very helpful to me because he was able to take care of things while if there's traffic jam or restroom didn't work or things like that. Instead of me driving all the way to Den Point, I used to call him in to take care of that. I was stationed at 1901 Bayside Drive, and Leesaw Beach took so many people. Well, Selva Road, there was two other areas, Selva Road and it's been a long time ago. Selva Road and Niguel Beach was also being built, and we had to man that. And the ranger at the South Beaches, I decided to take care of Dana Point, Niguel Beach, and Selva Road. The ranger at North Beaches, because they were larger than the North Beaches, the ranger at the North Beaches worked out in Newport, or Bayside Drive, would take care of Leesaw Beach, Park and Pier. There was a pier there then too. And Sunset Aquatic Park, Sunset Beach, and the medium at Sunset Beach wasn't built yet. So that ranger would take care of that, and I decided that Sunset Aquatic Park, it took two groundskeepers to maintain that. There was people living on boats there then. And also on Sunset Beach they traveled from Bayside Drive to every day to clean up the beaches. There was a lot of dogs and people trespassing out on the county property we had to watch out for too. They were building their patios out where they shouldn't be, so we had to watch the ranger had to make sure that they weren't going on encroachment on the county property. So we had to do a lot of talk to people, don't be building. They had to tear down a lot of patios and things like that because they shouldn't have been built there. The title of rangers or whatever, we also had to produce a budget every year. And no help from nobody. You had to come up with what you wanted at the park, what improvements you were supposed to have, and you would budget for that, whether it be going out at getting a tractor, a special type of tractor. We had to go to a tractor company and get all the specs and everything else, how much would it cost 2 years from that, because it almost took 2 years to get something. And then same thing with anything people. It took a long time. If we had any additional to a park property like Mile Square, we had a budget for extra groundskeeper. We had to justify it. Why do you need it? Or what would happen if you didn't? And we had a budget for mowing the grass at the beaches and so forth. I had a budget for lifeguards. We budgeted lifeguards. We had to get lifeguards from San Clemente or Newport Beach, but we had to put money in the budget for that because that's the only two places we use lifeguards. Is at Leesaw Beach. And anyway, we had budget for lifeguards, and we had budget for all our people, including we had to count in the vacations, comp time. We didn't pay overtime. They had to take time off, and we had a budget for sweeping at Dana Point. But everything had to be budgeted for, and if you didn't, you did without, along with all your toilets material like toilet paper, towels, soaps. And we also had a janitor we had a budget for at Newport. And it was at Mile Square we had a budget for lifeguard for the lake too. There was a lifeguard because 2 kids got drowned at Mile Square Park. And when I was working at Newport, I was called up one day. There was a kid that swam in the Lake 3, and we had to get divers from Newport Beach, and he sunk. He died, but we had to make sure there was signs every place, no swimming, no nothing. And everything was happening at the time. Even Casper Park was just being signed. And we had a budget for, although the park wasn't, we had budget for signs for that. And, but patrolling, like the Ortega Highway had to be signed all up to the hot springs. And sanitizing equipment had to be budgeted for. Big, large 10-wheeler, plus a big tractor to haul that to clean Sunset Beach. So, and also equipment operator. There was a beach there called Hole in the Fence, which is Capistrano Beach. And when the big storm come in, people used to build right up on the ocean, and the big waves used to come in and wash out the homes. We were called out. Had to get 60 inmates from Theo Lacey and bring them down to the beach, get sand delivered, and sandbag, saving some of the houses. Some of those are private houses. They were private houses. And they still got washed out. In fact, Lisa Pier there's no more Lisa Pier because of emergency. There was a parking lot at Lisa Beach used to end up with 2 feet of sand. There was no parking lot from all the waves that used to come over the berm. And lifeguard towers at Niguel Beach were washed out to sea. So we had to start all over again. And that was some of the emergency, but I remember the press coming down to especially Capistrano Beach, which we maintained it at that time. It was fenced off, but people were going in there because that's what we called the hole in the fence. And doing bad things, parties and all that. And there was down 1,000 steps and other areas, the right-of-ways, there was patios and houses were going to be washed out. So the board said, okay, to go get special equipment, go down and sandbag and try to save them. So that was the emergencies at the beaches. I remember it was all night sometimes, go sandbagging, and the next day we'd have to go and look at these patios that was damaged, and we had to break them down so they wouldn't hurt nobody, although they were private properties. But we had to do that, make sure that they were safe. If there was anything hanging, where it'd fall on somebody. And when I went at a Featherly Park later on, I was on 24/7 call all the time for some reason. If anything happened with a break-in at Miles Square, sheriff called me at home, said, go on over to Miles Square, there's a break-in. The alarm used to go off. There was maybe some kids, I remember Supervisor Stanton's kid was lost or run away or something in Miles Square. We had to go look for him. We had a lot of kids that was missing their parents, especially during Memorial Days, Easter week, things like that we were always trying to look out for, things like that. And at Featherly Park, there was a fire in Chino or Yorba Linda. There was a big fire in Yorba Linda, Chino. We had to evacuate the park. So the fire, forestry and the Red Cross and all come in and set up. They stayed there for a couple of weeks at a time. Nobody, no campers or anything was allowed in. And that's some of the stuff we had done at Featherly Park. And also, they used to have helicopters bringing people back and forth. And the biggest one that was here, 1969, at Irvine Park, there was the flood come down here from Lake Irvine Lake, washed out everything, buildings and everything, Area 6, and the maintenance yard, and the zoo we had, washed out completely. We were afraid that the Prado Dam was going to break down and wash that out, because the channel goes all the way down to the Santa Ana River, to like Bristol Street and all that. They were putting cars and vehicles in there to keep the place from eroding. But here, there was fish up here in the parking lots from Irvine Lake. The fence around our park was about that wide. It was stretched with fish, shad, and everything attached to it from that flood. And there was a lot of people was they couldn't come out of Mojeska Canyon. They had to get helicopters, and they were bringing them out to down the other end of Port Van Park. That's where they were. We couldn't come in the entrance. We came in from Peters Canyon side to work in the park here. The park was closed, but they were hauling people out for 3 or 4 days. That was stuck in the canyon, Mojeska Canyon, from that flood. So it was a big hectic thing. We lost a lot of tables, like the ends of those tables here we had made for picnic. We were buried. We didn't know what happened to them. They ended up in Villa Park someplace. Villa Park wasn't built yet. But all the pumps that we had here in where the old zoo was disappeared. Never found them. Because we would take inventory every year of all the equipment we had. And we couldn't find half of the stuff. And the zoo was there, was washed out. And when the park was closed for 2 months, when we opened the park, people wanted the zoo back. So they went to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors gave the Parks Department $1,000. They said, what can you do with $1,000 to put something zoo back? Where, at that time. So I built a fence all around there, made little lakes. We had Canadian geese, deer, and other animals that were flying around here. They wouldn't put them back there when it was built, and that's how we got back to the zoo. I had the carpenter build different sheds and build a little pond. We had some wood duck, well, mandarin duck. We couldn't get wood duck. We got a fox in the maintenance yard, put him in there in a cage, and we were feeding him chickens, so we had a lot of chickens. And people enjoyed it. So I decided we get 2 of everything, 2 turkeys, 2 rabbits, 2 whatever. Well, that we accomplished that, but there was more people after Easter Sunday, or a couple of weeks after, who dropped their banty hens, their ducks, their everything else into the zoo. So we had to have a roundup about a couple of times a month to round them up, haul them up to the Boys Ranch, and they had a farm up there. The Boys Ranch is still up in Tribute Canyon. So that's where they ended up. The deer was so used to here, but they were mean. So at a certain time of the year, we had to watch them because they were mating season. So the people who used to take care of the rest of them had to feed the animals in the morning and at night. And they had to carry an electric rod so to keep the deer away. They were mean. But it was an exciting time. It was a lot of fun, but the damage was terrible. We didn't have no water. There was a reservoir up here, some on the hill, and there was no water, so all the pipes from between Irvine Lake and here was washed out. So we were pumping water from the channels up there, kind of using bleach to make it sure it was safe. It was one of the funniest things that the superintendent was living in that house and during that time, and I guess too much bleach got in the water, and when he'd take a bath, he came out screaming, where's all this, what's happening? Because something happened that we got too much bleach in the water. Anyway, that was the story. I don't know about, I've been retired 22 years, so I don't know how they work now, but there was a couple of incidents that I didn't like when I went to visit Miles Square one day. In the morning, I went to talk to the supervising ranger about archery range. And there was a ranger in there, a girl, and it was doing something. She never came to the window and see, that I wouldn't accept when I was a ranger. You had to go to take care of the public, no matter what it is. Take care of them first. So he didn't move, didn't say anything. And finally had to go pay my way in and go around, and finally came back. But the way I looked at it back when I retired was some rangers they had the title. They want the title, but they didn't want the responsibility. They didn't want to be taught policemen. Well, we weren't policemen. We were we were there to help people, to show people good time, make your park safe and all that. That's what we were there. That's the title ranger to me was the right thing. That's the way we were up till 1979. But some of them just liked to be ranger. I had to fire one at Mile Square because he used to should come in at 3 o'clock, and he didn't even report to the office. He went down walking around. I said, "Where were you?" "Oh, I was there." You didn't get no instruction from me, so I fired him. They still didn't like it, but that's the way it was. What good are you to me if you don't do what you're told to do? "Oh, well, I was talking to people." Well, there's more to it than that. Talking to people is fine, but make sure that they're safe and they know there's somebody here to take care of them if something happens. Because we had at Mile Square at that time, we had to call the sheriff in, and the nearest sheriff was maybe an hour away to drive. There was no Fountain Valley Police, for instance, who had nothing to do with it. They didn't want to work without big pay from the county, so the county didn't want to give them. So we had to call the sheriff. And sometime maybe the sheriff would be down at Seal Beach, some area there, or might be in San Ann or something. So we had to wait an hour, sometime an hour and a half for a sheriff. Maybe there was an emergency, you could get the ambulance come in or something like that, or control, we used to call it Control One at the time. We didn't have radios like they do now, or we had radios in the truck, but very bad ones. So we go through Control One to get help. And what I didn't like about some of especially after 79, when they decided to add more positions and things like that, there was a lot of nepotism or whatever it was. And people to me, was hired that didn't have the experience or anything. They just wanted to be rangers. They didn't want to go and take care of people that was doing damage to the park or evicting people that was doing something, and they just let it go. When I was doing that, we made sure our rangers, first take care of your park, make them clean, safe, and help people as much as you can. But I felt that they were, some of them, there were great people like Tim Miller. I had Tim Miller when he came in. He was signed to me at the Meaches. He worked with me for months to learn everything else. He was very enthusiastic. That was great. But sometimes he didn't want us to be a police force either. Well, we weren't a police force. We were rangers. And by the way, when I worked at the Beaches, here's the park ranger at the county, and there was park ranger from the state next door, Doheny Beach. They had guns, which I didn't care about the guns, but they were able to cite people. They break a gate or something like that, they can cite them right there. But we couldn't do nothing like that. We had to call the sheriff in, or the time was Harbor Patrol, they weren't sheriff yet. And that's the way we lived. It was frustrating because we couldn't even tell people, put your dog on a leash, or don't be drinking there, So it was, because we were people didn't want us to be police. Some of the but they want to be rangers, but their responsibility comes with being a ranger to me. This is a lot, although I retired early because of some of that problems that we didn't see that we were doing right for the public, or the title of ranger that should have been a little more responsibility. All we turned out to be, we're just a name only. We didn't even go out in the park, some of them. And what I liked about, I loved to go to work in the morning. I loved to come to this park, or when I was here, or even the Beaches. It was so much work that you didn't have time to even think. And Mile Square, and the things were coming up every day. They want you to add. That was 1984 when I came back from Miles from Fedley Park to Miles Square. When Miles Square came Ranger 4 area again. See, there was 2 titles, Supervising Ranger and Ranger. Then they changed that later to Ranger 4, 3, 2, and 1. There was 4 titles. So I couldn't work at Miles Square later until 1984 because I only could work at Irvine, O'Neill Park, the Beaches, or Featherly. That's the only 4 places I could have worked because I was Ranger 4. And they changed it back again to Supervising Ranger. But when they made Miles Square Ranger 4, I was at Featherly. I came back there. John Musqueda was Ranger 3 or 4 at Miles Square. We changed places. He went to Featherly. That's before it went to KOA. And I came back to Miles Square, and there was a lot of things to be done there. The lamps, the street lights were falling apart. I had to go and count them all, 100 and something, and budget, hoping they'll won't hurt somebody before we change them, because they were rusting away. So we budget for that, got a whole lighting company and what kind of standards they have and get the specs, and I got it anyway. We got it done. We changed the bike trails from blacktop to concrete, 8 foot wide, about 4 or 5 miles of bike trail redone. Edging on the lake. The lakes were muddy and eroding away, and we budgeted for lake edging, which that was done after '84. So we'd accomplished an awful lot with improvements. So I enjoyed that kind of work because it came easy to me to. When you also had the money, we didn't have no money in the general fund, but we had money when we joined the Harbors, Beaches, and Parks because they had to give 20 cents for every dollar of property value to the Harbors, Beaches, and Parks. So before that was given out to either welfare or someplace, So we had a hard time managing to do anything. But anyway, all these improvements came from Miles Square Park. And then we had extra money. Sometimes I said, Mike, figure out something. We have money. What can you do with it? So I added another playground equipment, our playground area in Phase 1. There was only a playground area in Phase 3, Miles Square, and Phase 2. We added a playground where it is now at Phase 1. Add additional parking lots because we were full almost all the time. We had no parking. They didn't put enough parking there. And added, like I said, we made soccer fields. We started renting and reserving all 17 shelters at Miles Square for different reasons, so people could reserve. And we made a lot of money on that. We had to figure it out. And soccer fields, we were making a lot of money on that. We had 6 ball fields that Fountain wanted to take it away from us. Now, I fought that. I said, well, I ended up only getting 1 for the public in Miles Square. The Fountain Valley had the other 6 for their little leagues and all that, although they were given some parks areas over at Brookhurst. That's where Fountain Valley is now. The county gave them 30 acres or somewhat over there, and that's still there. I miss talking to people coming to the office, asking questions of that, and we were able to help. And there was a lot of problems there was Samoans used to use Miles Square Park that was real mean. They were playing cricket or whatever, and they were getting after the public. They were mean to them, so we had to evict them. I had to evict a lot of people. Some schools were coming in. The people that bring them to the park didn't look after the kids. They end up putting papers all over damaging the restrooms. So when we find something like that, I say we evict them. Some people didn't do anything; they just let them go. Some rangers. if there was a dog running loose in the park or whatever, they wouldn't do anything that. They wouldn't tell the people, put them on a leash. So, but there was a lot of other things happening. There was big parties, cakes of beers, and then we had to call the sheriff, but we had to wait for the sheriff for an hour and a half. So there was a lot of things we had to kind of do ourselves, but thank goodness they listened to us. Park ranger, if you want that job, be one. Help the public. Make sure the graffiti in the parks are taken care of right as soon as it happens. If you have the employees to do it, take care of graffiti, because if you leave it go, it only gets worse. If something is broken or dangerous, that comes number one. Take care of that, and see if you find any groups that been kind of, what do you call them? They're mean or they're causing problems. Take care of it. Get them evicted if they're causing problems. Get them out of the park, so people can enjoy themselves, their kids, and whether it be fishing or whatever. But that's what I advise the rangers. Maybe they're doing that here. I don't know. I haven't been with rangers for 20-some years, but that's what I would do. But also. Rangers they just go around and look in their file, but they don't observe anything that could cause some problems. Especially when people used to have a lot of teenagers or college kids come in with kegs of beer at Mile Square or the beaches. They let their dogs loose and they have big parties, and also there was commercial people coming in with clothes, selling their clothes to wholesalers. They should have permits. All them people should have permits. So you put them out and they got a permit. So a lot of commercials is done at Mile Square, and the movies at the beaches, they had to have permits, and they paid a fee to the risk management, whoever it was. And they had to sign a contract. But there was a lot of people like selling ice cream through the parks that shouldn't be there. We contracted with regular ice cream people to come in. They were paid their fee and they were able to sell, but there was a lot of other ones that wanted to do it for nothing, So that was constantly going on especially Mile Square. And signs, election signs stuck on all around the park, looked like porcupine with signs, including a supervisor sign. That was politics. We always pulled those out. We didn't leave any out, didn't care who they were. There was no signs left around anywhere in the park. That was free of politics, when I was there anyway. 1965 or no, 66 maybe, I built, the superintendent was still here, he wanted me to build the thing around the flagpole over here. It's still there. The flagpole, the rock work. And I know they dug 4 feet deep, filled with rocks, and built where the flagpole put rock, and they liked it so much. Anyway, in the meantime, apparently the Historic Society, or some of them, came to the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors asked, was there anybody here could do some monuments for them? And of course they recommended me. And I used to meet a couple of them down at Ortega Highway in the restaurant there one morning, said what they wanted. There was, the first one was down at O'Neill Ranch. We'd haul the rocks down there in cement and put a fence around it. They're still there. As you go Ortega Highway on the right-hand side at O'Neill House, there's a monument I built. Then they want me to build one at the Hangman's Tree. I built many monument for them, back of El Toro, the Hangman's Tree, some other ones, about 5 or 6 anyway. But a couple of years later, they presented me with this document here, and was sealed, but I used to know one person, Monty Montani. He was a big, movie actor that was involved with this ride. But those people on there, Bill Ripple and all that, they were big wheels in the Historic Society. They still are, I guess. But that's how I was presented that. I was also presented with the pictures, but I don't know what happened to the pictures of the monument. So I was, from the beginning, I was doing things that was, when I look back, it was very unusual because I was the only one who was allowed to do it. So that's how that came about. Oh, there was a lot. Early history was, we were so busy. There were parks coming in, looks like every week. While I was still at the beaches, Casper was one of the board of supervisors. We were dedicating Henry Dana statue. We were dedicating the sign at Coast Highway to entrance to Dana Point. We were dedicating so many things. So we had to have set up shuttle buses to our people to come to the dedications at Dana Point Harbor. The Dana Point Harbor, I must have about 5 bosses, including the big shot. They wanted perfect. Harry Gage was the Lieutenant Gage. He was a harbor patrolman. Olberg was the harbor master. Nothing to do with the sheriff. Then later they joined. But there was two Lieutenant Graham and Lieutenant Gage and Sergeant Olson that was involved at the beginning of the parks. Of course, we got Mason Park. I have to budget for Mason Park because there was no rangers yet. Get all the equipment they think they need when they open it, like mowers, shovels, wrenches, pipers, everything for Mason Park and part of Laguna Niguel Park, before anybody was signed. They were in the works. So there was so many parks coming in. It was so exciting, really. But I don't know how many times I've been called out during the night, or when Prado Dam, when the Corps of Engineers would let out water, we had to evacuate Featherly Park, get all the campers out. And that's another thing we had a problem with. We had campers that were staying over. There were actually people that want to live in the parks. They were only allowed to stay 2 weeks, and then they had to go out. They didn't want to go out, so we'd have to call the sheriff or something else and to get them out. And they had the gypsies, which was worse. They were something else. You had to know about the gypsies. I could write $10 about those things, but that was the history then. I remember when Featherly Park, Sand Canyon Road was the only way you could come in from Nevada or whatever, Las Vegas to Orange County. Always packed. I remember we were down at the Palo Verde one time fishing. The rains of '69 came, and we heard all this rain, and I said, I better go back because I was here in Irvine Park. And the superintendent was with the assistant superintendent with us, and people from building services. We were all down for the weekend. It was a holiday the following Monday, so we had no hurry home. But I told my wife, I told her, I better get back because something is happening here. I just got barely back before Sand Canyon. 91 wasn't here yet. Sand Canyon was closed. I came to Irvine Park, it was all water was going up to the top of the place where we used to put the money for collecting. We couldn't even get in here. And it was like that kind of people were stuck in Modjeska Canyon. We said that before, but you can delete some of this if you want to. But it was exciting. The beginning was so, I could do almost anything I want. When I went to the beaches, nobody knew anything. Where 1,000 steps? Where's the right-of-ways? Or anything?